the Paul did not baptize argument. Now, this argument comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 14 through 17, where Paul writes, I thank God that I baptized none of you except Crispus and Gaius, lest anyone should say that I had baptized in my own name. Yes, I also baptized the household of Stephanas. Besides, I do not know whether I baptized any other. I want you to pay special attention to this next part. For Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel. Now, this argument is taken from verse 17, where Paul says, Christ did not send me to baptize, but to preach. And those trying to get around the force of baptism, they will argue that Paul was teaching that baptism is not a part of the plan of salvation because he said that the Lord did not send him to baptize. And they believe this is a very strong argument. Friends, first, I want you to appreciate with me that this passage cannot be teaching that baptism is not necessary, or else it would be contradicting the other clear passages that we've already covered. Secondly, Paul himself taught that baptism is necessary. He taught, number one, that baptism puts a person into the body of Christ, 1 Corinthians 12:13. Number two, baptism puts a person into Christ, Romans 6:3, Galatians 3:27. He taught that baptism is when a person is buried with Christ, Romans 6:4, Colossians 2:12. He taught that baptism is when a person is united with Christ, Romans 6:5. He taught that baptism is when a person's sins are forgiven, Romans 6:7, Colossians 2:13. Thirdly, in the very context of 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul makes it clear that baptism is necessary. I want you to notice that he says two things are necessary if a person is going to belong to Paul or to Apollos or to Cephas or to Christ. Number one, he says that that person must be crucified for you. Number two, now listen to this one. Number two, he says you must be baptized in the name of that person. Now, that's very key. This very context teaches that baptism is necessary if you want to belong to Christ. Fourth, Paul said that he was not sent to baptize, and yet he had baptized people. So was he in violation of what he was supposed to be doing? Of course not. Remember, we've got to keep this in context. The context of 1 Corinthians chapter 1 is the fact that there was division in the church. Some people were holding to men instead of Christ. And in light of that, Paul says, I'm glad that I have not personally baptized many of you, or else you would be trying to hold to me. This would have aggravated the problem. When he said that he was not sent to baptize, he did not mean that he shouldn't do it, because sometimes he did it. What he meant was, this was not his primary work as an apostle. Any Christian can do the baptizing. That wasn't the special work of an apostle of Jesus Christ. All right, here's a fifth argument.